guys, in today's video I'm going to be talking about 5 different YA series that I think are worth the hype. So these are all books that have, or series that have been really popular on BookTube, on bestseller lists, basically talked about everywhere. And I think that they are totally worth all of the hype that they have received. So these ones are ones, most of them have been a few years ago now, that have been pretty popular. But if you're like me, sometimes I am the type of person where I will extra not read things if they're too popular, just because I feel like almost I just want to be different, I guess. And so I'm just like, I'm not going to read what everybody else is reading and everybody loves it, so I extra don't want to read it. So I'm making this video to let you know that if you are that type of person, you're going to want to put that aside and still read these ones anyways. I love reading YA. I read quite a bit of it. I read adult as well, but I do love YA, and these series definitely stand the test of time, and I really enjoyed them. So the first series that we are going to talk about today is arguably my favorite series, my favorite YA series of all time, maybe even, and that is Carnival by Stephanie Garber. So this one has Carnival, it has Legendary, and it has Finale. And there's also a spin-off series right now that she is writing called Once Upon a Broken Heart, and there is a second one coming out very soon. To this one, I believe it's going to be a trilogy as well. But basically, this series follows 2 sisters, Donatella and Scarlett, as they kind of go to this carnival, I guess is the best way to explain it, but it's like a magical carnival. So they are kind of fleeing a very tough situation with their father. Their father is abusive, and they are just wanting to get away from him. And they really want to go to this secret magical carnival that's held in secret. But you have to be invited by kind of the ringmaster, I guess, of this carnival called Legend. So they end up obtaining an invitation to this carnival, and they go, and one of the sisters ends up going missing in this carnival. And so, like I said, it's magical, so there's all sorts of different things that are happening here. There's kind of like side love story that goes on with our main character Scarlett, as she is trying to fight her way through this carnival, and she only has 7 days to do it because the carnival lasts for 7 days, and she needs to find her sister Donatella. So we kind of follow her as she's going through this situation and navigating this carnival and falling in love, and sorry you guys, my dog just knocked you over, and trying to find her sister. So I love this story because it's about sisterhood and the bond between women, but also, you know, coming into your own and finding out who you really are and testing your own strength. And I really love this. This is just very well written, this series, and I love Stephanie Garber. She's one of my favorite YA authors. And I just think she did a really fantastic job with this series. The next series we're going to talk about is Cinder. So this is the Lunar Chronicles series. This is by Marissa Meyer. We have Cinder, we have Scarlet, we have Cress, and we have Winter. And then there is a couple of other follow-up books. One is called Ferris, which is a book on, I guess, from the villain's perspective. And also Stars Above, which I believe is more of like a question and answer book. I've never read that one. I guess it's like questions about kind of this universe that we're in, but these are all retellings, which I love a good retelling. So Cinder obviously is a retelling of Cinderella, but it follows our main character Cinder, who is a cyborg I think in Shanghai, I think. And so the cool thing about all of these books is that they all end up intertwining. So we have Cinder's book, and then we have Scarlet, which is a retelling of Little Red Riding Hood. We have Cress, which is a retelling of the girl in the tower with the hair tangled. What's she called? Not Sleeping Beauty. You know, where he climbs up her hair, her braid. I can't remember. But anyways, it's a retelling of that one. I'm the best booktuber ever, you guys, clearly. And then we have Winter, which is a retelling of Snow White. So all of these books, they are each retellings of their own stories, but they all end up intertwining. So the characters all end up meeting each other. and they kind of all end up on this adventure together, which is really, really cool. And I just think that it was brilliantly done in the way that she was able to weave all the stories together, have it make sense, have all these different worlds of these stories kind of collide and have it all work out. Like, I just think it's so hard. I can't imagine being a series writer and having to kind of like, you almost kind of have to have the whole series mapped out before you even start, in order to make everything make sense. And it worked flawlessly in this series, in my opinion. So next is a book that I think has probably the most beautiful cover of all time, and that is the Hazelwood. So this is the Hazelwood series, and it encompasses, and it has the Hazelwood, the Night Country, and Tales from the Hinterland. So from the Hazelwood, basically we start following our main character, and her grandmother is a famous author of this book, Tales from the Hinterland. And what this is fairy tales. They're very, very dark. I will tell you that when I read this, I immediately wanted this one, and I was so happy when I found out that she was actually making this one, because this is the first one and this is the third one. But basically there's kind of a cult following around this book, around these fairy tales, and our main character's grandmother actually passes away, and she was completely estranged from her and her mother. But basically, long story short, is that she ends up being able to actually fall into this world. This hinterland that her grandmother had written these fairy tales about actually is a place that exists. Like, and I guess, I don't know if it would be a different timeline or what, or if it's just magic. But she ends up finding out that she can go to this place and actually interact with all these fairy tales. And there's quite a bit of turmoil that happens. There's missing people. She's basically on the search for her mother, and she thinks that her mother might have been kidnapped into this world. So she's going to try to find her, and just meets all these crazy characters, and there's a lot of really dark things that go on. This one, like I said, so this one and then this one follows this story. And then this book is kind of separate to it, that this is just actually the fairy tales that are talked about in these two books. And I loved this one the most. These fairy tales are just dark and enchanting and just beautiful, and even just like pages and stuff. They're just so cool. I really, really enjoyed these ones. And once again, like, I'm just a sucker for a really good different idea and something that's executed properly. I just love that, and I feel like that was done. And I really, like, initially when the Hazelwood came out, if it was going to be just a standalone book, I think I gave it maybe a 3. But all together, like the trilogy together, works. And some of the questions get answered. I will say our main character in this isn't very likable, but if you can put that aside, then you will enjoy these. So this next series is a series that I've talked about on here quite a few different times before. And I have said that I liked this series, but I wish that all of the books were a little bit smaller. As you can see, they're quite big, they're thick, and they could have probably all been about 100 pages less. So if you can get past that and just dig into the stories, I think you'll really enjoy them. And that is the Diviners series. So we have the Diviners, Lair of Dreams, Before the Devil Breaks You, and King of Crows. So these stories follow a group of teenagers in the 1920s or 30s, 1926. So the 1920s follows a group of teenagers who are diviners. So each of these teenagers have different powers. So there's one that can read objects. So she holds or touches an object and she can tell about its past. There's one that can walk in dreams and can contact people in dreams. Can start fire with her hands. There's one that can heal. Like, they all have different powers. And basically they end up coming together to kind of fight evil, to be honest. In this book, they end up fighting like a serial killer, but it all, like in each book, it ends up culminating to a kind of war between good and evil. And they kind of become outcasts throughout this series, and people kind of turn against diviners. And they end up kind of having to save the world, really, in the, throughout the books. They end up having to kind of save the world. and do it with everyone against them, which is really interesting. But yeah, I really enjoyed these ones. Like I said, they were a little wordy, and there was some parts that were pretty slow, and the pacing was a little bit off. But if you can kind of get past that, the books themselves are really good, and I love this story and I love the idea. And one thing I will say about Libba Bray is that she is amazing at really making you feel like you're in the 1920s. Like, she must have done so much research on this. She uses phrases, just how she describes things, like even just the way all the characters talk, and she never loses it throughout the entire series. Like, sometimes when people are writing from different eras, like, they'll start off strong and really give you that feeling, but it'll kind of fade over time until all of a sudden it just sounds like a book written in today's time. But she never loses that, and she does that very, very well. It's the entire time you know that you're in 1920s New York, and it is just awesome. And the last one that we are going to talk about today is Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. So this book series was originally just a trilogy, and I guess it just did so well that he ended up writing more books. I have actually only read the first 3, and I have talked about that in a book haul that I did a little while ago, where I explained that I read these so long ago, kind of when they first came out. I really enjoyed them, but I don't remember specifically exactly what happened in them. I wasn't doing booktube at the time. So I find a lot of times, like especially with doing booktube, is that you talk about books so often that you kind of remember them a lot more. But I read this before the time that I was on booktube, so I don't really remember fully what they were about. And so I have all of the books, but I've just been kind of putting off reading the 3 books that I haven't read, because I feel like I need to go back and reread the first 3 first. But basically, this one follows our main character, who has gotten into, like, he's having a tough life situation right now, and him and I think it's his father, they moved to like a West Coast island or an East Coast island or something. And he's just exploring one day, and he comes upon this basically old, wrecked, abandoned home that's like falling down. And he kind of goes like exploring it, and he realized that it was a home for like special children, and it was called Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. And he finds all of these photos that kind of show these children, and they're just odd, really spooky photos, which are included in here, of course. Let me find a couple of them. Like, they're really spooky pictures. But he ends up finding that this place is almost like kind of a portal, I guess, to another dimension where these characters really do still exist. And he kind of goes on some adventures with them, and that is played throughout the series, I imagine. So anyways, but I really did enjoy the first 3 of these anyways that I've read. Let me know in the comments down below if you have read the other ones and if they are as good as the first 3. Because the first 3 definitely, like, they were good just being a trilogy. I imagine he only wrote more because these ones were so successful, but as they should be. And I just love the addition of the creepy photos to it. It just really adds something to the series. Alright, you guys, so those are 5 YA series that I feel are totally worth the hype. So if you have ever kind of wondered about any of those series, I definitely recommend giving them a try, and I'm pretty sure that you will like them as much as I did. Anyways, I hope you guys are having an awesome day, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!